Hello, I'm Nathan from Serious Geeks, and this is a discussion on the Overwatch rules for the Warhammer 40,000 9th edition. As detailed on the Warhammer community website as well as the Warhammer Daily Twitch channel, Overwatch has changed. Instead of being an inherent ability that all units can utilise whenever they are charged by an opposing unit, essentially getting a free round of shooting hitting on an unmodifiable 6 with all your weapons, now you can only access this ability if you have the ability written into your datasheet, which as far as I am aware there isn't a unit in 40k as of yet in 8th edition that can do so, so this will be a new codex and a new ability thing, or if you spend a command point to use the Overwatch stratagem. Now, everyone's take on this is different. It's a very much a Marmite situation. People either love it or hate it. I myself hated Overwatch. I hated the way that I would brave the enemy fire all game, trying to get up close to try and make a charge, losing models on the way in, and then the opponent would get a free shooting round at me just because I've charged. I hated that, and then they just retreat and shoot again anyway. Even units without fly could just retreat, and then the rest of the opposing army could just wipe out your unit. So really, I just felt like Assault in 8th edition was a difficult thing to pull off unless you had a very decisive and a very powerful army, such as Blood Angels, who are very useful in Assault and they can actually reach there with all sorts of additional abilities. For the rest of us Ultramarine players, as well as some other armies, you might want to have a combined arms approach where you have some shooting units as well as some assault units, faster and slower units. You know, a nice spread of different things to take. Most non-competitive players take this as a matter of course anyway, but if you play competitively, it would be suicide to take an assault unit. In fact, in my casual games against one of my Orc opponents, an Orc player never used an assault force. He just found that they would just get wiped out on the way in. They get shot on the way in, and then I'd get a free Overwatch, and then as an Ultramarines player, I'd retreat and shoot again. Where's his incentive? So, I also found that Overwatch slowed the game down. If a vehicle, say I'm trying to counteract someone's Overwatch, so I charge a Dreadnought first, so my infantry do not get shot by all those Orc shooters, as an example, the Dreadnought could lose a couple of wounds. Or nothing would happen, because there's only 8 Orc shooters there. And, you know, fishing for sixes isn't really a positive way to play the game. So it's just bogging down the game with needless dice rolling. That sort of thing was actually mentioned by Stu Black, the head of the Warhammer 40,000 design studio. And yeah, I totally agree with him. Some people will be very upset about it, but personally, I think with the game changing, you know, it's not a big problem. Your army will change anyway, the rules change, you'll get other benefits with other aspects of your army, and you never know, if you're a Tau player, you might have a lot of data sheets in the future that can fire Overwatch anyway. I'm really liking the way that you have to pay a command point and you can use it once per player turn, which is essentially once per battle round to be able to fire Overwatch. This means that you will have to make a strategic and tactical decision on which units you would use that command point for to actually fire Overwatch and whether it's worthwhile. If a knight is bearing down on you, probably not worth firing those 3 bolters that are left in a remnant squad that are just about to get squashed by him. You're not going to do any damage, you're going to waste the command point. On the other hand, if an Orc mob is charging your 10-man intercessor squad, you might want to fire off some Overwatch to try and cull the numbers before they reach you. Maybe you've got aggressors with flamers, they're very good for Overwatch. So instead you'll have to have a more strategic and tactical approach to your Overwatch usage. And more decision making is always better for the game. It just makes the game, you know, more fluid. It means there's less likely that someone's just going to roll over you just by rolling dice at you and having a slightly better list than what you have. They have to make an actual tactical and strategic decision, which brings in a bit of player skill. And I'm all for that in this game. I do appreciate that there are some players out there who may be a bit upset about the Overwatch changes, particularly shooting based armies. However, as I mentioned, there will be plenty of changes in Warhammer 40,000, and I'm fairly certain that 8th edition was completely dominated by shooting forces. My biggest fear against Tyranids and Orc armies was being shot off the board, which is not really how it's supposed to play. So now, with a combination of obscuring terrain and Overwatch changing, more mobile units and outflank, players cannot be static in their player choices for the game. They have to be able to move around the table, they have to be able to get into close combat, or avoid it by moving. And that means that firepower is more relevant for the people who have to actually avoid close combat, because they have to be able to move and apply the firepower in the right aspects to stop themselves being overwhelmed for close combat. More strategic and tactical choice. This is exactly how the game should be played. It's early days yet, but it's fairly obvious that the big units which have a lot of firepower are still going to utilise this stratagem. A knight, for example, a large tank, a devastator squad, they all might very well want to fire their weapons, as will some special abilities such as the Ultramarines having an ability to be able to use several units all supporting fire in their Overwatch. That could be very useful, and as a one-off you might very well use it. Just there on the screen you can see the wording for the Overwatch rules and how it's just been cleaned up a little bit. It's very definite exactly how to use it now, and that's nice and clear, and that's exactly what we want to see. If we take a look at this additional image here, you can see that defensible is a tagline for terrain that is very useful for defensive units. Terrain pieces that are defensible will give a bonus to Overwatch as well as close combat for the units that are in it. It makes sense. If someone charges you in close combat and you're defending that objective in a heavily defendable area, such as a bastion or what have you, you should be able to have an advantage on the opponent when they come screaming into you. The fact that units can choose which to do is very nice as well. Now just imagine a Tau player with 10 Fire Warriors getting charged by, say, 10 Gene Stealers might very well decide, actually, I'm going to use my Overwatch stratagem here, and because I'm defending this area terrain with the defensible tag, I'm going to hit on 5s. That's a nice way of trying to cull those numbers coming into you to perhaps help the rest of the army later on. Also gives a nice little benefit to, say, Gene Stealers who are in that cover who might get charged, if there's 1 or 2 Gene Stealers left, might get charged by, say, an Ogrin squad, and they get the opportunity to hit them even better. I'm not sure which terrain pieces will have the defensible tag, and it's too early to tell for that as well. But if there is a unit that can go into a defensible piece of terrain, it will be very hard to shift with Assault now, which is kind of how it should be. Lastly, as was mentioned by Stu Black, there are abilities that will be inherent to units via certain special rules, particularly on datasheets, that allow them to Overwatch or modify the Overwatch as they do it. Going forward, there will be some units that defend other units in the army and get the Overwatch tag automatically. It's very hard to speculate, but I imagine Centurions would be one of those units. I would actually quite enjoy it if Tactical Marines got that option. It would give them a little bit of a difference to Intercessors to be taken on the table, and they'd be a very defensive unit with their special and heavy weapons. Though, like I say, it's far too early to be able to tell. It's important to point out that the game has not completely changed on its head. Assault hasn't now turned into the dominating factor in the game. It just seems like it's got a chance now. In summary, I'm all for this change for Overwatch. It doesn't bog down the game with needless dice rolling, and it makes it more of a strategic and tactical choice as you build your army and place your units and then go on to move them around the table to protect other units, etc. Exactly how you're going to utilise this stratagem. So, let me know in the comments below whether you enjoy this change, whether you detest it, whether you're a Tau and Astra Militarum player and you think it's going to break the game, or whether you actually enjoy the idea of having an assault based force that can actually get to grips with the opponent with obscuring terrain and then isn't punished by Overwatch. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all soon. Peace out.